we'll get started here in about 30. Does that work? So my name is Mike Arnold. I represent Ammon Bundy. This here is Lissa Casey, Lissa-Casey. And we had an opportunity after court to meet with Mr. Bundy for a few minutes. I spoke with him. He doesn't have a written message today. He asked me to summarize a few things. But first, Ms. Casey is going to just explain what happened in the pretrial detention hearing today, just to kind of follow what the background is on what was going on this Friday.
Thank you. I'm Mr. Arnold's co-counsel for Mr. Bundy. What Mr. Bundy wants to express about this hearing is that we respect the decision, we respect the judge, and we respect this process. This is the first step in this process. We intend to appeal the judge's decision today, but that does not mean that we don't respect what happened and that he does not respect her order. When she ordered him back into federal custody, he went and he did so respectfully. His message remains exactly what he told the judge today, that he still is pleading with those at the refuge to go home.
As Mr. Bundy expressed at the hearing, he actually got to speak to the judge himself. He reiterated some of his viewpoints on the situation, and he also expressed that he is a Federalist. He sees the place and the role for federal government, and therefore respects the role of the court in this process. Now, to emphasize the respect that he has for the court and respect for the process, he has asked me to continue to address those that remain at the facility and let them know that he still wishes them to go home. There's been we made some attempts this morning to make some contact with the folks that are still there. There was some media reports as well as some back channel reports to me that they don't believe that Mr. Bundy is asking them to go home because they haven't heard it from his own mouth. And being that this is a federal courthouse and we can't get cameras in the courtroom, they still haven't heard it from his own mouth. Although all of you are going to be able to convey that message, and hopefully they will be able to trust that because of the relationships that they've already established with you all at the refuge. However, this morning I reached out to some back channels to attempt to negotiate some contact with them. And it didn't go anywhere. What we feared and what Mr. Bundy feared was that they would become more entrenched if they learned that he wasn't being released. And I haven't been able to follow up on the media yet, but I received several text messages from those in the media that reported to me that they are now saying that they're not going to leave the refuge because he was not released. That is a horrible idea. The process is working. This was the first step. There's going to be an appeal of this on Tuesday at 10 a.m. and another judge will be hearing the case here at the courthouse. So rest assured the process is working. I was attempting to get a message to them before the court proceeding because I anticipated that this may be their response. I contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office and asked if they could facilitate me taking a short video clip of my client, Mr. Ammon Bundy, stating and expressing the urgency for them to leave the facility. Not out of self-interest for a release hearing, but because we were worried that they would find a loss of hope in the fact that there wasn't a release. But there was some release decisions made today. They were stayed for 3 defendants pending Tuesday's hearing. So there is a process that's working. I also contacted the U.S. Marshals Service and asked for permission. It's their facility. They're a very welcoming, warm group of individuals and a real pleasure to work with. And I asked for permission to be able to videotape just with my cell phone, just a couple of seconds of him expressing it in his own words. And they told me to contact the U.S. Attorney's Office, which I already had. So we weren't able to get that done. And we tried again after court, and we weren't able to get it done then either. So at this point, I implore those that remain, if you do not believe that we are speaking on his behalf, and these are his words, listen to Ms. Bundy's words that she expressed in that audio clip. or find a way to get my cell phone number from those in the media and contact me directly. I'll be happy to FaceTime you. You can look me in the eye and we can talk man to man to see if you trust the message we are conveying, that it's authentic.
Is Bundy a felon?
And if that doesn't happen, you know, I fear that the dialogue isn't going to continue. So feel free to make contact.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions?
Bundy is a
U.S.
felon.
attorney's response when you approached them about getting a short clip of their client?
Their response was that they were busy because we were getting ready to go into a release hearing, and you know, they didn't want to deal with it right then because, you know, there was a lot going on. They were in the process of getting stuff filed. So, and I asked them about the U.S. Marshals being involved, and basically we just put off the comment.
So they were open though to be busy?
I don't want to speak on their position. It's just that we didn't get an agreement, and we tried to move to the next step, which was back to the U.S. Marshals, and then we weren't able to get anybody to approve.
Will you reach out to Mr. Knight or anyone this weekend to try to facilitate it again?
I'm going to continue to attempt to reach out to try to convey Mr. Bundy's message personally, to see if we can establish the rapport that they can believe that it's authentic, and we can bounce ideas back and forth about why Mr. Bundy believes that this is a good idea.
The judge expressed concern that Bundy might come off by another federal property or state that it's home and not come out at some point. Respond to that.
Yeah, Mr. Bundy has no risk of doing that. The whole purpose of accessing the refuge was to get a attention to an issue that was being ignored. And I've said this before, but I'll reiterate it. How many of you all were having debates over dinner about federal land ownership regarding ranch land properties in November in 2014? I reckon not many of you have. And the reason that we are talking about this now is because of civil disobedience, because of free speech. They exercised their First Amendment right to free speech, and they happened at the same time to be exercising their Second Amendment right to possess firearms. That does not mean it's a threat. There's many that say, and I'm not speaking, you know, on behalf of Mr. Bundy at this point, just my own personal opinions are, you know, the Second Amendment is there to protect all the rest. And when you are in a situation where you are trying to express free speech, open carrying a firearm is a form of free speech. It is speech. You are conveying to the public a message in the sense, not a threat, but that the Second Amendment is important and viable, and it can be peacefully advocated, as they were doing. They didn't intend for any violence, and there was none except Lavoie's death.
Ms. Casey, you and several other lawyers likened your clients to civil rights leaders from the 60s, and this to civil rights incidents. Have you discussed that sort of comparison with Mr. Bundy? Does he see himself akin to the...
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
I have not heard that comparison from Mr. Bundy. I did hear a lot of amazing advocacy by some wonderful attorneys today. I heard conversations and discussions and advocacy about the First Amendment, about the Boston Tea Party, about civil rights and civil disobedience, and it was impassioned, and it was a wonderful display of our system of justice. And I felt honored to observe these fine lawyers make these arguments on behalf of their clients, exercising too many rights in our Constitution that I can even enumerate right now. You just witnessed. It was a civics lesson for me to be observing this process, to watch the advocacy, all the different points of view by each lawyer. It was a wonderful experience, and I hope this increases the dialogue about our constitutional rights, and our children aren't just going to classes and history and thinking that this isn't applicable today. And it is, and it was a wonderful experience to watch those fine lawyers.
Advocacy is civil.
Well, Mr. Bundy, you know, she's disappointed. She's worried about her children. She's worried about her husband, and Mr. Bundy expresses the same concern. He's not a flight risk. There's no risk of this happening again because phase one has been accomplished. The attention is to the issue. Phase two is litigating these issues in an Article III court. And this is where we are. It's the perfect venue to keep the dialogue alive. There's no more action, no more civil disobedience needs to be undertaken in order to get this to a national stage. And that's what's important to remember, is that the message is out there and people are listening. And these folks need to be back home to their families, and they need to continue the dialogue. No violence was done by any of the protesters.
But I'd like to end with that just because Mrs. Bundy might be disappointed with the decision, and Mr. Bundy might be disappointed with the decision, that this is the process. You just watched a constitutional debate that was, as Mr. Arnold said, a privilege to watch the discussion and the dialogue. Disappointment is not disrespect. Disappointment is, I respect the decision and I will take the next step. And that's what Mr. Bundy intends to do.
Will you request a change of venue?
That's an interesting question. We don't address strategy or tactics questions here. The next phase will be addressed, along the way. There's going to be motions filed potentially. I don't know. I can only speculate. We haven't seen discovery. We've only seen what has been conveyed to in the media. This is a long process, which is why it's so important for the release decision to happen quickly, because we want Mr. Bundy to be home during this lengthy process.
But just to land in some cases, it's like you were hoping what Judge Boston might decide on Tuesday.
No, I mean, judges make up their minds based upon the facts brought before them, and we have no doubt that whatever judge hears this case, whatever time, they're going to be informed based on what they read in the record and what they see in court. And that's why this is such a fair and wonderful process in protecting the rights of our citizens. Thank you. That's all we have.